Right now, you probably spend about $200 a month on things you won't remember by next week. Coffee, takeout, a subscription you forgot to cancel. It doesn't feel like money. It feels like nothing. But what if that exact same $200 every single month for 30 years wasn't nothing at all? What if it was the difference between working until you're 70 and retiring a millionaire? Let's find out what actually happens. Start with the number everyone skips past. $200 a month for 30 years is $72,000. That's it. That's all you actually put in. If you just stuffed it under a mattress, that's the total you'd have. $72,000 for 30 years of discipline. Not exactly life-changing, but money that sits still is only half the story. Money that's invested does something strange. It grows on top of its own growth. This is compound interest, and it's less a financial trick and more a force of nature. The same math that describes how bacteria multiply or how a rumor spreads through a school. Small, then slow, then suddenly enormous. Here's how it actually plays out. The S&P 500, the index that tracks 500 of the largest companies in America, has returned close to 10% a year on average since the 1950s, according to data compiled by S&P Dow Jones Indices. Some years it loses money, some years it gains 20%, but smoothed out over decades, 10% has been the long-run average. So take your $200 a month, invest it every month for 30 years, assume that same historical average return. You don't end up with $72,000. You end up with roughly $450,000. Same amount of money out of your pocket, 6 times the result. How does $200 a month turn into 6 times what you put in? Because most of that final number isn't your money anymore. It's growth on top of growth on top of growth. In the first few years, your contributions are doing almost all the work. By year 20, the earnings are doing more work than you are. By year 30, your original contributions are almost a rounding error next to what the market added on its own. You stopped being the main character in your own portfolio. Think about it like a snowball rolling down a hill. At the top, it's small, and you're the one pushing it. Every few feet, you add a little more snow yourself. But partway down, the snowball gets big enough that it starts picking up snow on its own, faster than you ever could by hand. Keep pushing long enough, and the hill does more work than you do. This is why the order of your investing life matters more than people expect. A dollar invested at 25 is worth dramatically more at retirement than a dollar invested at 45, even though it's the exact same dollar. Time, not the size of your paycheck, is the biggest lever in this entire system. Fidelity's long-term account data backs this up again and again. The accounts with the highest balances almost never belong to the highest earners. They belong to the people who started earliest and never touched the money. Which raises an obvious question. If the math is this simple, why doesn't everyone do it? Because 30 years is a long time to trust a number on a screen. Somewhere around year 7 or 8, the market will drop. Not a little. Maybe 30 or 40%. The kind of drop that makes the news, the kind that makes your account balance look like it's evaporating in real time. Research from Vanguard has repeatedly shown that the single biggest threat to long-term returns isn't a bad year in the market. It's an investor who panics during that bad year and sells. Here's what almost nobody tells you about those crashes. If you're still contributing that same $200 a month while prices are down, you're not losing. You're buying more shares for the same amount of money. The crash that feels like a disaster is actually the market going on sale, and you're the one still shopping while everyone else runs out of the store. Economist and behavioral finance researcher Terrance Odean has spent years studying what individual investors actually do with their money, and the pattern is remarkably consistent. People sell after prices fall and buy after prices rise, which is the exact opposite of what builds wealth. The market doesn't punish people for investing. It punishes people for flinching. So the $200 was never really the point. The habit was the point. Nobel laureate Robert Shiller has written extensively about how markets are driven as much by human psychology as by economic fundamentals, and the investors who win long-term aren't the ones who pick the perfect stock. They're the ones boring enough to keep showing up month after month, crash or no crash, for 30 straight years. Now stretch the timeline just slightly, and the numbers start to feel almost unfair. Bump that same $200 a month up to $400. And your final total doesn't just double. It roughly doubles and then some, because more money is compounding for the same 30 years. Start 10 years earlier, at 25 instead of 35, and even without changing the monthly amount, you can end up with nearly twice as much, purely because you gave the snowball a longer hill. This is the part that should genuinely bother you. The single biggest variable in this whole equation isn't the stock you pick. It isn't the app you use. It's the day you start. Every year you wait is a year of compounding you can never get back, no matter how much extra money you throw at it later. So picture two versions of you. One starts putting away $200 a month today, imperfectly in whatever account is easiest to open, and just leaves it alone. The other waits for the perfect moment, the market dip, the extra bit of savings, the time when it finally feels comfortable. That moment rarely comes, and the version of you who waited usually ends up contributing more money overall just to catch up to the version who started messy and early. Now, $200 a month still doesn't feel like much. That's exactly the trap. It was never supposed to feel like much. That's what made it easy enough to actually do for 30 years straight. The money you'll barely miss this month is the same money that quietly builds the life you'll be glad you have in 30 years. The coffee you forgot about becomes the retirement you didn't expect.